Do you mind? I turned toward the hallway and followed her directions to get to the restroom. I put her right in front of the restroom and got out, waiting nearby while she went about her business. While I waited, I ordered an Uber. She called out to me, and I walked in, finding that she had managed to get up and get dressed. I picked her up again and carried her to the couch. "What now?" she asked. "Well, I need to pick up your car. It's illegal to park there at night." "How are you going to do that?" "I ordered an Uber, and I'm on my way to pick it up now." "Can I borrow your keys?" "Oh, Sam, you've gone too far for me, but I really appreciate it." She handed me the keys, giving me the license plate number and her parking spot, and I went outside to wait for my car. It should have only taken a few minutes. I stopped on the doorstep. "Holly, won't you have dinner with me tonight?" "I'd love to," I said, flashing a radiant smile, "but I'm in no condition to go anywhere." "Sure, I thought I'd just grab something while I pick up your car, and we'll do it here." I was just starting to walk out the door when I heard her softly, "Sam." I turned to her, and her face took on a more serious expression. "Sam, you do remember that I'm pregnant, right?" "I know I'm a man, Holly, but I have some thoughts." I said with a smile, "I remember why. It's just that a lot of men aren't interested in instant family. I just wanted to make sure you knew what you were getting into, Holly. Of course, we've only just met, so we still have a lot to learn about each other, but I can assure you that your pregnancy is not a problem." "Okay, Sam. I just wanted to." "Well, to be sure I understand. I'll be back as soon as I can with her car keys." I walked to the curb to wait for Uber, which pulled up about 10 minutes later. The ride was uneventful, and I found her car relatively easily. I figured Italian food was pretty safe, so I found a local establishment not too far from Holly's house and ordered my meal. It was about 7 o'clock in the evening when I finally returned to Holly's house with containers of Italian food in my hands. I found Holly sitting in the same spot, but she had already changed into a dress. "I wanted to look pretty for our first date," she mentioned. "Then you could have stayed the same as you were, but somehow you still managed to get better." I smiled at her as I went to set the food on the table. By the time I came back for her, she was on her feet and, though slowly on crutches, made her way toward me. I moved to help her, but she stopped me. "I need to practice, Mom won't be home for a couple of days." I motioned her to a chair, and she lowered herself into it. As she did so, I smelled her perfume, obviously freshly applied. "You look and smell so good, Holly." I suddenly feel a little rough. "Oh, you look very nice." To be honest, I don't like men who are too father. We chatted about everything. I told her about my job at Tim's company, Durham Commercial Services, and she told me about her part-time job at a local car dealership, where she works in the title department. Her mom works as a legal secretary, and is her main source of income. Her father left when Holly was 5 years old, and she hasn't seen or heard from him since. She was an only child. I told her about my marriage, or rather the end of it. She was shocked by what Pauline had done but didn't seem very pleased with the way I'd handled the Karen and Wendy issue, though she didn't say anything. And to be honest, when I said it all out loud, I wasn't particularly pleased with myself either. I hated to say it, but Pauline was right, they were just acting like teenagers, and I was supposed to act like an adult. I had to figure out how to fix it. I purposely avoided the topic of how she ended up 4 months pregnant with no husband or boyfriend. It was none of my business, and I didn't want to seem judgmental. At some point, her phone rang, and I went out to leave her alone with her mother. It was a beautiful night with a light breeze blowing and the clouds blocking out most of the moonlight. I looked up at the sky, thinking about the beautiful blonde in the house behind me. It's been a few years since my marriage broke up, and I haven't been in a long-term relationship since then, but suddenly, I thought it was time to consider the possibility. Do I really want to spend the rest of my life alone because my first choice turned out to be a cheating, treacherous? Damn it, I need to deal with the emotions Pauline was instilling in me. After I finished talking on the phone, Holly poked her head out the door to let me know I could come back and thanked me for the privacy. We spent the rest of the evening on the couch, talking about everything in the world except how there was this baby growing in her belly. She didn't propose, I didn't ask. Before I knew it, it was past midnight, and the yawns we both let out suggested it was time to call it a night. She got up and, on crutches, walked me to the door. We exchanged a brief kiss, nothing more than a smack, and agreed that I would come over tomorrow to spend Sunday together. I drove home like I was on a cloud. I slept very well. The next day, I arrived at her place around 9 a.m. with breakfast, which I picked up at a nice cafe near my house. The French toast, sausage, and hash browns cost me a tidy sum, but I didn't care. I knocked on the door and waited patiently. Holly was on crutches, after all. When the door opened, she had clearly just gotten out of bed. "God, do you really get up this early every morning?" she said, squinting her eyes and smiling. The perils of the job. Construction starts early. Heck. I've been sitting around waiting for a decent hour. Well, you did bring breakfast, so I guess you're forgiven. We exchanged another brief kiss, after which I busied myself with making breakfast while she waddled over to a chair. She raved about the quality of the breakfast, and I knew she would since I'd eaten here before. I suggested we spend the day traveling through the countryside. I had lived in North Carolina for a few months by then but hadn't traveled anywhere except for work and Tim's parties, so that's what we did. It was a beautiful day, and we had a great time. We spent some time at the museum, which thankfully had courtesy motorized carts, so Holly didn't have to walk. We had lunch at a small local diner and spent a couple of hours just sitting in a park we happened to be passing by. It was very relaxing, and I noticed that Holly often made contact with me, just a hand on my arm or shoulder, leaning against me, but the contact was still there. By the time we got back to her place, she was very tired, and her leg hurt a lot. I gave her a bath and covered the brace with plastic to keep it dry. I entertained her while she took her bath and then helped her into bed. We agreed that I would come over after work the next evening. She usually worked on Mondays, but she was going to take a few days off to relax. I brought along some tacos from a local family taqueria, and we talked some more. While we talked, I gave her a foot massage, and soon she dozed off. I tucked her into bed and got ready to go out on my own. As I was leaving, she sleepily thanked me for coming and reminded me that her mother was coming home tomorrow. Before I knew what that meant, she was asleep. As I walked out to the car, I figured she was letting me know that since her mother was coming home, she didn't need me the next night. I was sitting in my apartment, preparing to watch a documentary about World War II and somehow force myself to eat a frozen meal. What the hell is Salisbury steak? When the phone rang. "Hello, where are you?" asked Holly's angelic voice. "I'm home." "Why aren't you here?" "I thought you were coming." "I thought? Well, I thought you didn't want me there since your mom was coming home." "You even reminded me of that before I left last night," I replied, somewhat embarrassed. "Men, I told you this so you would be ready to meet her. We have been waiting for you?" "Okay, I'm on my way." Holly met me at the door with a lingering kiss and put her arms around my neck. I could get used to this, I thought. I walked into the house, and Holly's mom, Barbara, was already carrying food to the dining room table. If it weren't for the age difference, they might have been twins. Barbara had the same wild mane of blonde curls, though her hair was more groomed than Holly's. She was in great shape and probably weighed only a little more than Holly. I moved toward her, expecting a handshake, but she pushed my hand away and hugged me tightly, giving me a motherly kiss on the cheek. "I'm so happy to meet you, Sam. Holly has told me so much about you." "It's my pleasure, Miss Allison. Please call me Barbara, and for the record, Allison is Holly's last name, but not mine. My last name, believe it or not, is Smith, thanks to my last husband. He was number 3, if you count, and I don't intend for there to be a number 4. I glanced at Holly, and she only rolled her eyes at her mother's revelation. I guess that was helpful since the food was ready. I quickly washed the dishes, and we sat down to eat. Barbara had made stuffed pasta and garlic bread with fresh garlic, diced as it should be, and it was delicious. "I apologize for the confusion, Barbara. I realized that Holly meant that since you were coming home tonight, I wasn't expected." "It's okay, Sam. Misunderstandings happen. I was just happy to meet Holly's new boyfriend." I glanced at Holly at the word boyfriend, and she smiled back at me like. I said, "She's told me quite a bit about you. I understand you're in construction." "I work for a company called Durham Commercial Services. Some of it is construction work, drywall and things like that, but we also do pest control, electrical, and plumbing. I guess it's not so much construction as it is home maintenance." "Do you like it?" "I like working with my hands," he replied. "My boss has hinted that I'll be given a chance to be a project manager in the near future." "What do you do?" "I'm a legal secretary," I answered. "I work directly with the senior partners, so I have a lot of late nights and I travel a lot. By the way, thank you for coming to take care of Holly when she was injured." "It was my pleasure, Barbara. It's been a long time since I've had someone to take care of," I admitted, feeling myself sinking into thought as my girls' faces popped into my mind. I think I came to my senses pretty quickly, but Holly and Barbara had expressions that made them realize what had happened. We chatted non-stop during dinner, and then I got busy cleaning up. By the time I was done, it was late. Holly and Barbara seemed to say goodnight to each other, and then Barbara came over to me. "I'm really tired, so I'm going to go to bed. Traveling takes all the energy out of me." "It was nice to meet you," she said, giving me another hug and a kiss on the cheek before heading down the hall to her bedroom. The house itself was modest, with 2 bedrooms and 2 baths. Barbara occupied the master bedroom in the back of the house, and Holly occupied the other bedroom, using the second bathroom that was across the hall. Holly asked me to turn off all the lights while she watched a movie on Netflix. They had one of those deep couches, so we had plenty of room to lie down together. I positioned myself behind her on the left side, and she positioned herself in front of me. It was some kind of romantic movie, but all I could focus on was the beautiful woman in front of me. A couple of minutes later, we made love. The credits were rolling on the TV, and we lay happily with each other. Minutes passed, and we both drifted into sleep. I slowly woke up about an hour later. "You should probably get going, you have work tomorrow," Holly broke the silence. I knew she was right, but I really didn't want to leave her, and I was willing to get up early to go home before work if I had to. We walked up to the front door. "I'll see you tomorrow," I said as I looked back. She was still standing in the doorway, and we waved to each other as I started the engine and pulled away. I hoped I wasn't being too optimistic. I felt like last night was an exploratory night to get a feel for each other. I had to leave to be ready for work the next day, but I didn't want that to happen again, so I brought a change of clothes with me for tomorrow, just in case. I wasn't going to say anything to Holly unless it came up. Barbara met me at the door, and I joined Holly on the couch. When Barbara called us to dinner, I was surprised to see only 2 plates. Holly and I sat down at the table while Barbara excused herself. She showed up about 30 minutes later, looking ready for a night on the town. If Holly didn't say anything, I have a date tonight. I'll be back in the morning, and you kids have a nice evening, Barbara announced before leaving. I had been at the construction site for a little over 2 weeks after Holly fell. We spent almost every night together, though some nights were spent only sleeping because I was starting to overwork myself, and that was dangerous. Events seemed to be repeating themselves as Tim and Oscar drove up to the workplace together. I quickly looked around to see if anyone looked guilty of denouncing Tim to me, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. I wasn't worried because I hadn't had a drink since I got out of the hospital, but I was pissed that someone had tried to snitch again. To my surprise, Tim headed to the house where we were working, and Oscar was just waiting by the truck. He greeted all the workers and praised them for a job well done. Finally, he came over to me. "Got a minute, Sam?" Tim asked, and I nodded, walking to his side, which is where he headed. I looked in his pocket for a breathalyzer but didn't find one. "Trouble, boss?" I inquired. "No, it's just that I was visiting a few sites today and thought I'd check in. You didn't show up to the last couple of parties, which I totally understand, and I just wanted to see how you were doing." "I'm doing great, Tim." "Well, I've started seeing someone," I confessed, feeling a sense of relief. "I'm glad you're starting to rebuild your life. Any luck with the kids?" "Actually, I'm going to need some free time when it's convenient. I'm going to fly down to see them." "That's good, Sam. That's really good. Just let me know when and for how long, and I'll make sure you're provided for. I'll check the flights when I get home and let you know." I flew out the following Tuesday. I assumed the girls would be busy over the weekend and might not even be home. We always expected the girls to be home in the evenings, and I assumed the rules would be the same, hoping I'd get a chance to keep the girls overnight. I splurged on a nicer hotel room with 2 double beds. I was willing to do whatever it took to repair the relationship that my resentment had damaged. As the plane whizzed through the clouds, I thought about Holly and our mutual goodbye. She helped me look for flights and pack my things. She was getting around much better, but I still carried her up the stairs to my second-floor apartment, and for the first time, we made love in my bed instead of hers. We went back to her house when it was time for me to go to the airport. She said goodbye to me at the door. "I'm going to miss you, Sam." "Yep, I love you." I suspected she was worried, looking into my eyes as she expressed her love for me for the first time. She shouldn't have been worried. I put my finger under her chin, and lifted her up so I could look into her eyes. "I love you too, Holly. I'll be back as soon as I can." She smiled broadly and hugged me again, and then I left. The warm feeling stayed with me all the way back to Austin. My flight landed in the middle of the afternoon, so I grabbed a bite to eat and checked into the hotel. I bought a few things at the store that I thought I would need for the duration of my stay at the hotel and waited. The girls would come home from school around 4:30, and I assumed that would continue to be the case. Then there was usually homework until dinner was ready. I wondered if that was still the case and decided to go with that assumption until I found out otherwise. It was 5:15 when I pulled up to the house in my rental car. Pauline's Toyota was in the driveway along with an unfamiliar old Nissan. Dave's car was nowhere to be seen, so I figured he was still at work. I expected someone to come out of the door as I walked up the walkway, but no one did. I assumed that meant no one had seen me, but conceded that it might have something to do with the fact that no one was interested. We'll see soon enough. I knocked on the door and waited until something sounded behind the door. The door opened, and Pauline appeared on the doorstep. I had to admit that she looked as beautiful as ever, but I also realized that I had no feelings for her. something I couldn't say before. She looked at me in surprise, walked quickly through the doorway, and hugged me. Sam, oh my God, it's you. You're back. You moved back in. The girls are going to love it. Finally, she unclenched her hands and pulled away. No, Paulie, I haven't moved back. I flew in to see the girls. She looked disappointed with my answer, and I had to assume it was for the girls and not for herself. I wondered briefly if everything was okay in the new marriage, but it didn't bother me, and I soon put the thought out of my mind. Oh, good. They're working on their homework. I'll get them, Pauline. Wait. There's something I have to tell you first. She closed the door completely and turned to listen to what I had to say. She looked alarmed, probably assuming something hateful was about to come out of my mouth. Pauline, I just wanted to say that I'm sorry about the way I spoke to you on the phone that time. You know exactly what it was about. I'm sure she nodded. I was hurt, I was angry, you were drunk, I was drunk, and that's not a good combination. I didn't want to admit it, but you were right. I could barely take care of myself at that point, let alone the girls. But no matter what, you didn't deserve to be treated like that, and I wanted to apologize. Thank you, Sam. I really appreciate it. It's been a difficult time for everyone. Are you in town for long? I'm flying in on Sunday. I was hoping the girls would stay with me for at least a couple of days. Why don't you leave them for the whole time you're here? I'll have them packed for a few days. I'd appreciate it, thank you, Pauline. Sam, could you come over here tomorrow to talk after you take the girls to school? Just you and me. I expected this, Pauline was always trying to get me to talk about it. I assumed she mostly wanted to assuage her guilt, but apparently, it was time for a new conversation. Taking a deep breath in and out, I answered, of course, Pauline. I can do that. Probably having interpreted my agreement as something more than it actually was, she seemed pleased and smiled. Okay, tomorrow then. I'll go get the girls and have them get ready. Not a minute or two later, the front door swung open and my girls came running out of it, raining down on me in a way that would make any linebacker proud. I couldn't make out any full sentences, but there were a lot of "I'm sorry, we're sorry, and I love you." Finally, we were down on the lawn. I was lying on my back, and the girls were spread out on top of me. They seemed to have grown a lot in a very short time. They were still trying to talk at the same time, and I raised my hand to stop them. Girls, you don't need to apologize, and you don't need to forgive. I was an adult, well, I should have been an adult, and what happened was my fault. I had already lost your mom, and I felt like I was losing you too, and I didn't handle it very well. Yes, Daddy, but we could have been more careful, Wendy said. But then you'd be giving teenagers all over the world a bad reputation, I laughed, breaking the tension. Look, girls, we can go around blaming each other, but I'd rather focus on moving forward. Your mom said I can keep you at my place until I get home on Sunday, so pack your bags. Oh, Dad, but this weekend, Karen started. Don't think about this weekend, young lady, Pauline interrupted. Now go and get ready. I watched the girls run off, making sure they were out of sight. This weekend? I asked Pauline. Oh, we were planning on taking them to the lake this weekend. Dave's parents have a house there. It's nothing that can't be postponed, this is more important. Thank you, Pauline. I didn't mean to disrupt your plans, I said. She nodded in response and then went to check on the girls. I walked over to my rental car, made sure it had room for their bags, and soon we were on our way. We pulled into the hotel and unpacked their bags. They both plopped down on the bed they were to share and looked around. We went to Texas Roadhouse for dinner, and I groaned in disgust when Karen ordered a salad. Okay, it was a big salad and it was very tasty, but damn, it's a steakhouse. However, Wendy did me the honor of ordering the steak as well as the baked potato. Sometimes you have to live a little. We spent the evening learning about their lives. Karen had found a boyfriend. Is any father ready for his daughter's first boyfriend? His name was Rob, and he was in several of her classes. She showed me a picture, and he looked pretty cute, but I was once a teenager. So eventually I had to make them finish their homework. I just relaxed and sat on the internet, glad that my anger and bitterness were only costing me time with my daughters and not the daughters themselves. A couple of times, they caught me just looking at them. They would smile, I would smile, and then we would both go back to our business. It was all very sweet. The next morning, I drove them to school and then made the dreaded trip to my old house to talk to Pauline. Honestly, I didn't see the point of it. We were divorced, had been for years. I was willing to talk about the kids since I was now willing to play as active a role in their lives as I could despite the distance between us, but I doubted that was what Pauline meant. I had barely reached the front door when Pauline opened it in anticipation of my arrival. She put a glass of water in each of us, and we sat down at the kitchen table. I remembered all the conversations we'd had at that table, including the one in which she'd said she was divorcing me. "Thanks for coming, Sam. I know you didn't mean to, unless it's about the kids and getting me some dates. I just don't see the point of it. Paulie, Sam, it's been 4 years, and we still haven't had a real conversation. I know you were hurt, and the part of me that still loved you suffered for you. But it's been so long since then that I was hoping the anger would at least subside. But it doesn't seem to have subsided even a little bit. Why has it faded? Has something changed?" "No, nothing has changed. You're still cheating on me." She tried to interrupt, but I held up my hand. "Whether you had sex with him, before you served me or not, you still cheated on our marriage. You spent time with him, lied to me about where you were, spent enough time to develop strong enough feelings, and you decided to leave me for him. You destroyed our family. He destroyed our family. You left me to struggle financially and get 4 days a month with the girls while you got most of their time and financial improvement. That's the way it was, Sam. I didn't marry David for the money, we love each other and are very happy. That's great for you, but it has nothing to do with me. What, am I supposed to be happy just because you're happy? Well, no. I just wanted to tell you that I didn't divorce you and marry David to hurt you and get more money. It's just happened. Great. That's great. Good for you. I'm glad ruining my life didn't give you too much trouble. See, that's what I mean. You want to twist things around to make me seem evil, like I only did it to hurt you. And that's not really what it's about. Whether it was your intention or not, you damn well had to know it was going to happen. What almost always happens in divorce. The mother gets the kids, and the father stays part-time. It can't be helped. I slammed my hand on the table. Hell yes, it's possible. It wouldn't have happened if you had stayed true to me. To fall in love with Dave, you had to open yourself up to the possibility. All those times you two skipped out together or just spent time doing whatever were a direct assault on our marriage. And you did nothing. Nothing you did to stop them. I don't know what you're hoping for, Pauline, but if you think we're going to somehow become friends, you're in for a disappointment. I'll do my best to be polite to you when we have to be in the same place together, but that's the best I can offer, Sam. You're right, and I'm sorry. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. But damn it, Sam, I'd really like to forget about it. I know I hurt you. I realize that. But isn't there a way, now that it's been a few years? Isn't there a way for you to forgive me, not to forget, but to forgive? I tried my best not to lash out at her, even though I thought she was being completely ridiculous. She just didn't understand? Pauline, because of you, I lived like a starving college student for several years. I barely had enough to eat most of the time, and I lived in a shitty apartment in a shitty neighborhood. I'm sorry, Sam, but how could I have known that? You didn't know because you chose not to know. You knew how much money I make. You knew where I lived, and the rent was posted right on the website. You knew how much child support you were getting. It's simple arithmetic, Pauline. But you didn't care to find out what conditions you left me in. You still had your own life and a new, richer husband, so who cared about me? The girls didn't say anything, so I thought you buried your head in the sand. That's what you did. The girls never said anything because they didn't know. I made sure my pantry and refrigerator were full every weekend when they visited. The rest of the time, I lived on ramen and macaroni and cheese. The good thing is that a box of mac and cheese is enough for 2 meals if you're careful. On top of that, I've been trying to save money to be able to take them out whenever they want to do something, and saving even more to save up for that stupid video game. You knew that, but you went out and bought it anyway, like it was nothing. And to you, it probably was. You know what? Screw civility. If we have to be in the same place in the future, just stay away from me, all right? Just stay away, Sam. I don't. Is there anything else you want to say, Pauline? This may be your last chance, Sam. All I can say is that I'm sorry. I had no idea it was this bad, and you're right that it never occurred to me to find out. I guess I thought you'd say something, since it worked out that way. Yeah, having my wife leave me for my best friend wasn't humiliating enough. Let me go to them and tell them how hard I am financially. Pauline sighed heavily and seemed to be running through some thoughts in her head. I was tempted to just leave, but I wanted to get this over with, and I intended to see it through. Sam, you're right. I just didn't see the situation from your point of view, and I guess it was easier for me not to know the truth. I felt guilty enough as it was, and I guess that allowed me to think that you were doing fine. There's no point in letting facts invade your own reality, is there? I guess it was naive to assume that we'd all somehow become friends again. I guess so, yes, but we have our daughters to raise, and I'd like to work something out, some kind of visits over the summer and vacations and things like that. Of course, Sam. I'll never keep them from you, as long as you're in a good position. We can work something out. Even though the experience had not been pleasant, I was glad that this conversation was a thing of the past. Now I knew for sure that all those times Pauline had asked me how I felt about picking up the girls, she was just trying to absolve herself of guilt. She didn't care about me so much as she wanted to convince herself that her choices hadn't hurt me too much. I picked up the girls from school, and we headed to a nearby miniature golf course. We kept score and had a great time. We went back to the hotel, and I assigned them homework to work on. I ordered pizza, and we talked over dinner. This time it was my turn to answer questions. I told them about my life in North Carolina, keeping quiet about my excessive drinking and apologizing again for the way I had behaved. They assured me that I was forgiven and were just happy that we were back together. They were especially happy to be able to spend time with me in North Carolina. I also told them about Holly. They expressed surprise that I was dating a pregnant woman, and I asked them to tell me more about it. "Geez, Dad," Wendy said, "you're almost done with us, and now you can start over. That's another 18 years. You know you're almost 40, right?" The smile on her face was precious. We'd always been able to banter with each other, and I was glad we hadn't lost that. "I think I remember that," although with my advanced age, I can't always remember such complicated things. I'm already planning on getting a modified wheelchair to keep up with the young guy. We all burst into laughter. It was so nice to be with them again. When dinner was over, they went back to their homework, and I went back to surfing the internet. I didn't want to disturb them from watching TV, and it didn't look like there was anything worth watching. I called Holly when they were already asleep and brought her up to speed. We talked for about an hour, expressing how much we missed and loved each other. I explained that I was hoping for dates, and she said she couldn't wait to see them. After we hung up, I headed to bed. The rest of the visit was similar: dinner on Friday, bowling and mini-golf on Saturday. Since we didn't have to worry about school, I had an early morning flight on Sunday and wanted to spend as much time with them as possible. And they certainly didn't mind if they wanted to be with friends or at the lake. They kept their heads down. On Sunday morning, I drove them to the house. At the girls' insistence, I went inside and said goodbye to Pauline. I tried to be a good role model, but it still took all my energy. I hadn't seen Dave the entire trip, and that remained unchanged today. I decided he was deliberately avoiding me. The plane ride home was bittersweet. I was sad to part with my girls, although I was glad that everything was fine at the time of my departure. But I really missed Holly and looked forward to being with her again. I caught a cab at the airport and went straight to her house. Barb opened the door and directed me to Holly's bedroom. "She's waiting for you, if you know what I mean," she said, smiling and winking at me. By the time June came around, I had moved in with Holly and Barbara. I was staying there almost every night. As it was, so when the lease came to an end, I didn't bother. This allowed me to save quite a bit on rent, even though I insisted on contributing to the household expenses. Since the girls' school ended at the end of May, I sent them to visit for a couple of weeks in mid-June. This allowed them to relax for a week after school and socialize with friends but still stay with me in North Carolina for Father's Day. Holly bonded with them right away, and vice versa. While I was slaving away at work, Holly would take them out for mani-pedis, movies, or whatever. Karen and Wendy raved to me every night about how much fun they were having and asked me when I planned to propose. I confessed to them in confidence that I already had the ring and was just looking for the right time. I think they enjoyed being kept in the loop on all of this. There were many tears as we saw them off on their return flight the last weekend of June. I had hoped they would visit us again before school started in August, but there were no guarantees. The next time they would come was Thanksgiving. I was hoping that I could travel to Texas to see them, but due to work and Holly's soon-to-be birth, I wasn't sure if that would work out. Wanting to celebrate the 4th of July anyway, we made plans to attend Tim's party. I knocked on the door, and Tim greeted Holly and me by name. It was the first time I knew Tim and Holly knew each other at all. I didn't talk much about work, so the topic just didn't come up. There were people coming in right behind us, so we didn't get a chance to talk. Although he did congratulate Holly on the birth of the baby, we went inside, chatted for a bit, and soon I was off to get plates of food for Holly and me. Over the last month or so, Holly had become simply voracious, and even as I loaded my plate, I knew I would get less than half of the food. Tim came up to me as I was adding pasta salad. "You didn't tell me you were dating Holly," he began. "I didn't know it mattered," I replied. "I didn't even realize you knew each other until today. She's a friend of a friend. She came to some parties last year. The last one was a Halloween party, I think. She was there in a costume." He was suddenly silent, and when I looked at him to see what was wrong, he had a thoughtful expression on his face. I watched him for a moment before I interrupted his reverie. "What's going on, Tim?" He came out of his trance, but his expression remained the same. "How far along is she?" "About 8 months. Why? It's just... Sam, do you remember the Halloween party? Some of it, I guess. I was still drinking then, so not much. Again, why? Well, I guess you don't remember, but you slept with Holly that night. I saw you go into one of the spare bedrooms. Sorry to correct you, buddy, but I remember one thing about that night. My date had dark hair. Holly, as you can see, is very light. I know, but Holly was dressed as Wonder Woman that night, complete with a dark wig, and of course, she was wearing a mask like everyone else. I paused and remembered that night. I allowed that it could have been a wig, but even if it was true and Holly and I had slept together anonymously months before we'd met, I didn't see the point in having this conversation. Okay, let's say you're right. So what? Look, Sam, Holly broke up with her boyfriend a few months before, and they'd been together for years. More specifically, he left her for someone 10 years younger. Neither of you were making good decisions at the time. I don't know anything at all about Holly's sex life, about whether you were the only one she slept with at the time or even that night, Tim. What I mean, Sam, is the Halloween party was 8 months ago, and she's 8 months pregnant. Sam, this could be your baby. Tim's last 5 words crashed into my brain with such force that I was speechless. Was it really true? Holly and I hadn't talked much about our recent past. She knew about my marriage and how it had ended, and that for a while, I'd found solace in alcohol. But we never talked about my one-night stands or how she got pregnant. It was time to do that. I set the plate of food aside and went to find Holly. She was in a small group of other ladies and smiled when she saw me. I was expecting you to have a food baby. I'm really hungry, eating for 2, remember? I know, it's just... We need to talk. I took her hand and led her to one of Tim's spare bedrooms. Holly saw the look on my face and was immediately worried. Sam, what's wrong? She asked as I sat her down on the bed. Holly, I never asked about how you got pregnant. I always thought it was your business, and if you wanted to share, I knew you would. But now I feel like I need to ask. I've always considered it my business. May I ask why you feel you need to know this? Do you trust me, Holly? Completely, Sam, with my life. I have a reason, I promise, and I'll tell you when we're done. But right now, can you just tell me what happened? She lowered her head in thought, then looked up at me and spoke. Terry had broken up with me a couple of months before. We'd been together for years, and he kept saying he didn't need a marriage certificate to commit to life. He left me for some 20-year-old blonde with huge fake boobs. It was a disaster for me. What did you do? I know a lot of women would start getting out to prove how desirable they are. I withdrew into myself. I didn't go out. I ignored people who were trying to help me. I was very depressed and allowed myself to withdraw into myself. My mom let me do it for a while, but eventually, she started to push me to do something. Eventually, I agreed to go with my friends to Tim's Halloween party. I'd met Tim before, but I didn't really know him, although my friends had told him what had happened, so he was okay with me coming. He was always good with names. I've never been a big drinker, so even though I didn't drink that much that night, I was pretty drunk. There was this guy I saw at the party, and I was pretty horny, and we ended up in one of the bedrooms. He's the father of my baby. I'm sorry, Sam. I never wanted to tell you about this. It's okay, Holly, it really is. I know this is going to be very personal, but it all has a point, okay? Good. Are you sure he's the father? After all, there was no one else there that night or around the same time. She threw me an amused look, obviously growing more and more curious as to why I was asking. For a minute, I thought she was either going to get angry or just say it was none of my business, but then she answered, "No, Sam, not with anyone else. I haven't had anything with anyone since Terry broke up with me, and I didn't until our wonderful first time together." What did this guy look like? I don't really know. He was taller than me and in good shape, but we were all in costumes and masks. What kind of suit did he have, Sam? What? Please, Holly, this is very important. It was a Scottish thing. He was wearing a loose white shirt and... Hell, what do you call them? A skirt. A kilt, yeah. A kilt. He was wearing something that looked like a beret, and he even had this ridiculous set of kids' plastic bagpipes. While she was talking, I was looking for pictures on my phone. Finally, I found the right series of pictures and held it up so Holly could see. Did he look like that? Her eyes widened at the sight of the image on the screen, and she jumped to her feet. This is him. What the hell is going on here, Sam? Why do you have a picture of him on your phone? I think I took it in stride, but you have to tell me what's going on, babe. I'm sorry I upset you. I just wanted to make sure before I said anything. What the hell? Are you sure about, Holly? The person in this picture is me. She couldn't have been more stunned if I had walked up to her and punched her in the face as hard as I could. It was a good thing there was a chair behind her because she just collapsed on it in shock. As she finally managed to say, "Tim took a picture of me when I came to a party last year. Holly, baby, I think that's my baby you're carrying." Holly just stared at me in bewilderment. I wondered what she was thinking. I just waited for her to make sense of it all. Heck, I was still digesting it myself. She slowly lowered her eyes and looked at her stomach, then back at me. "Is that your baby?" "Looks like it." "Oh my God, Sam. Wishes really do come true." "What?" I asked, a little lethargic and not understanding. "Ever since I met you, I wanted it to be your baby. To be more than just some random stranger's baby. I know that didn't matter to you, and that's one of the reasons why I love you so much. But I really wanted it to be our baby in every way. And now it is. Oh, Sam. I'm so happy." Epilogue. Holly and I hurriedly tied the knot at the courthouse just weeks before Ashley Barbara Beckman's arrival. Once Holly had recuperated from childbirth, we threw a lavish celebration. Much to our surprise, Barbara decided to marry one of the firm's senior partners and retire to explore the world in an RV. After leaving Holly's place, Barbara confided in me, revealing her intention to wait for Holly to make some life decisions before moving on herself. It turned out that she had narrowed down her list of suitors to just one. With nothing tying us down in North Carolina except my job, Holly and I opted to relocate to Texas to be closer to my daughters. Leveraging the skills I honed working for Tim, I landed a lucrative job, enabling Holly to focus on being a full-time mother. Managing our growing family soon became a round-the-clock endeavor. During our time in North Carolina, which spanned about 3 years, Tim never settled down with one partner for long, maintaining his restless lifestyle. 2 years later, we found ourselves back in Texas, receiving a wedding invitation from an unfamiliar name. Curious, we attended the wedding and met the bride. Upon returning to Austin, Karen had secured admission to UT, while Wendy was wrapping up her final year of high school. Despite being accepted to UT, and other universities, Wendy deliberated over her choices. I encouraged her to prioritize her happiness and assured her of my support. Meanwhile, Pauline and Dave faced relationship troubles. Dave's past experiences had left him with trust issues, exacerbated by Karen's departure for college. Whether Pauline's actions fueled his concerns or they emerged from his own insecurities remained unclear. Nonetheless, I couldn't help but view it as a form of karma. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this segment. Stay tuned for more, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.